Hello everyone. This week sees the publication of this new book, which is by me and Steve Cole. It's Doctor Who 1001 Nights in Time and Space. It's a book that Steve came to me suggesting at Penguin Books and BBC Books. They decided they wanted some kind of compendium of stories that would retell some favourite Doctor Who stories in a kind of fairy tale way. And when Steve brought me in to work on it with him, we hit upon the idea that they were kind of, rather than just being Grimm's fairy tales, they'd be like folk tales. I had this idea of a kind of Scheherazade figure beginning the tale telling and the stories branching off. That's always fascinated me, that the Arabian Nights way of telling tales. So it became this kind of treasury of stories, and I even got to illustrate it, which I'm sure I've talked about before on here. I'm going to read the beginning to you now and see how that goes. So I won't explain what the framing device is, the person that sits down and begins the night of tale telling. I let you find out for yourself. This is the storyteller's arrival. On an empty planet, in a desolate corner of the universe, there was a desert of dusty jewels. A bony old horse called Chuzzlewit pulled a squeaking, ramshackle wooden caravan, slowly but quite surely. Multicoloured crystals crunched under the wheels, and the caravan rocked gently side to side, trying to find the carriageways that crisscrossed this once busy world. Guiding the horse and the carriage was an old man in a tattered velvet coat. He was worn thin, with a silver moustache, and on his shoulder sat an irritable, inky black raven called Evermore. Together they inched through the devastation. It was hard to imagine what this landscape used to be, a glorious city of glass and steel, or meadows of jewel-bright flowers. Now it was all just the same for miles and miles, chunks of crystal and powdery sand. The old man and his two friends pulled towards the horizon, even though it looked as if there were no places left for them to visit. Once upon another time, the old man had been a storyteller of sorts, travelling the many worlds, drawing curious minds into his caravan filled with exotic books. Now the carriage was empty apart from one single volume. "I've had a look in that last book," cackled Evermore. "I can hardly make head nor tail of it. It's all in different languages, and it's been written by 100 different hands." "It doesn't matter," said the storyteller mildly. "So, even if we ever meet anyone again on this road, that book will never mean anything to them. They'll never be able to read it." The old man shrugged. "We'll see." He was used to the raven's endless naysaying. They had been companions for a very long time. "Sometimes I think you don't want this library to continue, Evermore," said Chuzzlewit. "You put such a downer on things. Don't you want our master to get his stories out there?" The raven sneered. "I don't think it matters, to be honest. Who cares about stories?" "I care," said the horse wheezily. "The storyteller and I both care." "Look at this place," the raven cried in exasperation. He flapped his dusty wings, and a couple of feathers dropped off him. "It's desolate and lifeless. It needs so much more. Water, fire, people, energy, all the things that life requires. Stories are just a luxury on top of that. Who cares about stories when there isn't anything else?" The storyteller shook his head at his squabbling friends. "When there's nothing left in the world, that's when we need the stories most of all." "Sentimental old fool," the raven said. Chuzzlewit gasped. "Don't you say that? We would both be skeletons lying by the roadside without this kind old man in our lives." "Speak for yourself," snickered the raven, but he knew the old nag was right. Anyway, it doesn't matter if our last remaining book is unreadable and messy and the work of many hands. the storyteller piped up suddenly. "Do you know why?" The raven sighed. "No, tell us, old man, why is that?" The storyteller smiled craftily. "Because all the stories that ever were are all inside my head." The horse cried out. "Hurrah!" The raven said, "Rubbish," or words to that effect. "It's true," the old man beamed. "I have memorized all the best ones, the most important ones, or the ones, shall I say, that I like the most." The raven wasn't impressed. "And what use is that? What help is that going to be to anyone?" The old man didn't reply, for he had wearied of arguing with the shabby and ill-tempered bird by now. On went their journey through the dusty, trackless wastes. Time and space were great dissemblers these days, since the crashing wave of death had surged through all of creation. It had levelled and destroyed, until even the dust and dark had been robbed of meaning. Still, the old man clung to what he knew. The raven's claws in his shoulder, a tell of life's sharpness. Chuzzlewit's kindness, which softened the pain. The rocking of the caravan, a reminder of the journey that went on, with both bad and good. And the stories, of course, always the stories. My purpose, the old man reminded himself, is to traverse the ruined universe and find people who will listen to my tales. Through the telling, the past can be reborn anew. This dusty, forgotten universe can return to life. A tinge of doubt set in. Mostly he was hopeful, like Chuzzlewit, but the bleak words of the raven sat heavily with him. Could anyone really be bothered to sit listening to stories now that life had become a constant scrabble for survival, when it was just so hard to scrape a living out of the dusty earth? Some of the few survivors they had met on the road had been frightened brutes. They ate rocks or weeds or even each other. Far from listening to stories, they had tried to capture the storyteller and his friends and bring them to harm or to the cook pot. There had been some hair-raising escapes over the years. But the old man still managed to hold on to his hope that someday they would find just the right audience. They would find the people who would sit and listen enthralled to the tales they had learned by heart. And then, at the dark end of one day, a drab, dusty day like any other, his dearest wish came true. The ramshackle carriage drew to a halt in the middle of the desert, because at last the storyteller had found company. Here, in the middle of absolutely nowhere, there was a small fire burning with a fierce intensity. What time of night was it? Impossible to tell under that starless, moonless sky. The storyteller just knew that this was the moment. This was the moment he had been searching for. A young man sat there, cross-legged on the sand. He had a huge grin, a charismatic grin, and he fixed it on the storyteller before jumping up. Full of glee, he danced around in rings as the doddery old man climbed down from his carriage. "Are you who I've been looking for?" the storyteller asked. He was wary as well as weary. He hardly dared believe he could have reached this part of his own long story. His fingers fumbled with Chuzzlewit's harness. Once released, the horse dropped and rolled on the dust to ease his backache. Evermore flapped around their heads, cawing. Was that a touch of happiness in the raven's harsh cries? The old man couldn't tell. But he could feel the rise of his own heart and could hardly believe it. Company at last. "Come here," the young man told them. "Come and sit down next to me. Please, tell me your story." And so began a whole night of storytelling. Or was it many nights, 1,001 nights? The storyteller had carried his tales from one world to another, in hope and sometimes despair, trying to recall all those preposterous escapades. He knew he must pass them on to this eager young man before his time was up. Was the young man really prepared to embark on this series of improbable adventures? "Oh, hell, yes. Yes, of course I am." The young man grinned eagerly by the light of the fire. "Let's go." So, with the watchful eyes of the raven upon him and the whickering of his exhausted horse soft in his ears, the old storyteller embarked on the first of his tales. Come on, socks. And we get a whole bunch of stories. We get stories called things like The Tale of the Sleepers, The Butterfly Who Became a Caterpillar, The Luck of Love, The Henchman, The Witch, and The Brain. Come on. The Man with Five Faces, Night of the Demons, The Collecting Gene. And it's a full compendious anthology written by me and Steve. I'll just show you a couple of pictures to whet your appetite. There's Sarah Jane and a giant spider. And there was a picture of Shooty I was going to show you, but I don't know if I can find it now. There's Sutek slobbering over the TARDIS. Anyway, I hope you like it. I hope you'll go out and find it and buy it. Okay, thank you. See you again soon. Socks. Say goodbye.